Hello and welcome to this tutorial on how to make an animated logo. So if you haven't seen my earlier video on how to set up a dynamic paint with image sequence, then please do so. Otherwise, apart from that, I will also do a little bit more advanced animation. You should know about F-curves and keys and things like that, because I will use them, but I won't explain them in detail. So let's get started. I'll set up the scene. I'll delete the cube and the lamp, and I'll use the camera in a top-down view. And the camera, I will be using an orthographic view, because I don't want any perspective in my view. And I will also adjust the render settings here in light path. I will reduce this a lot because we won't need it. We will use our own light emitters. And apart from that, you can see here I'm using Cycles Render, and I've set up the sampling that is appropriate for Cycles rendering. Now we need to set up our first brush and our first canvas. I'll just hide the camera and Shift A to add a plane. Scale that to fit the scene. Control A to create a sphere, which will be our first brush. I'll scale that down like so. A little bit more. Okay. Starting with our animation, I will animate this brush to go in a circular motion, following a circle or a curve. I'll add a curve to the scene. I'll scale that up to be proportionate to the scene, right about there. Okay. Now, as I want the brush to follow the curve, I'll select the curve, enter Add Object Constraints in the Constraints tab, and I select Follow Path, and right here I select Orbit. You can see that the brush immediately snaps to the curve, and by adjusting the offset right here, we can adjust where on the curve the sphere or the brush will be. So what I will do now is I will create an animation of the sphere following the curve. I'll configure the sphere to become a brush in the Physics tab using Dynamic Paint, and I'll also set up the canvas to be a canvas in the Physics tab. Okay, I've now done a short animation. You can see that while going through the timeline, you can see that the sphere is moving along the orbit. That's good. And in the brush itself, I have created a brush material with the standard blue paint. And in the canvas, I've set it up for image sequence. I will increase the quality, the resolution a bit to 1024, and I've set the output folder to be a specific folder, so I will know where the images are being put. I've UV unwrapped the surface, of course, and I will set a dissolve of this surface to let's start with let's go with 25. And at this point I will rename the canvas to canvas trail because that is what I'm going to draw on the canvas. So let's bake. Okay, the bake is complete. I will now fix the material for the canvas to use the images that we've created. Okay, now we can see the baked images, and from these images you can see that the sphere is going quite quickly. We'll even get a gap between the dots the brush is making on the canvas. So perhaps we need to reduce the speed of the brush, and at the same time I don't want actually this round brush thing. What I actually want is a trail going after this being created by this brush that is thinner than the sphere itself. And in order to do that I will still use the sphere, but as you could see from the rendering here, it's all gray matter of some kind. I will change that to an emission shader, so we'll see it pop, and I will keep this sphere, but I won't be using it as the brush, as the sphere is too wide, and I will replace the actual brush with a cube that is thinner. So let's do this. We'll lift the sphere from up from the canvas. At this point it's good to just disable the follow path, and at this point I will create a cube. I will scale it to the appropriate size. Now I will set the sphere to be the parent of the cube, so I will right click the cube and then right click the sphere and then press Ctrl P, set object to parent, good, and then we can enable the follow path and see what we got. Okay, we need to pull the cube down so it's in contact with the canvas. And we can also see as we animate this, we see that the cube isn't following the line. So selecting the parent object that is actually connected to the orbit, we will select follow curve, and this will align the cube with the curve as it goes by. So I will slow the animation down so we don't get any gaps in between the brush strokes, and then I'll bake the animation again. Okay, the bake is complete. Now we'll just fix the materials for the sphere. Okay, we've made the changes. We can now see that the animation has slowed down, so the streaks actually overlap. Good. We've made an emission shader for the brush. We have a glow here, so we have an emission shader on the actual sphere. In a top view, it will look like the sphere is having the trail, but as you can see, we have a brush down here, and the brush I've given the material transparent. So now we have an animation. Right, next step is to animate the very beginning of the animated logo, which is the part where the spheres are, their orbit is expanding from a point in the middle. And the way to do that is simply to animate the size of the circle or the orbit, and we want to change the scale of this circle, but not in the Z direction. We only want to animate the scale in the X direction, so we could actually lock this value here on Z, and when I press scale you can see that anything else is changing, X and Y direction. So that's how we'll do the animation of the growing orbit. And we don't want the streaks to be visible as the sphere is circling in the middle. It will just be a blue ring, and I don't want that effect. I just want the streak to be visible as the orbit grows. And the way to do that is to animate the brush. We'll have to do the actual brush, which is connected. That's the cube, that's the actual brush, and we will animate the alpha value. So we'll have alpha equals 0 in the beginning, and when I want it to start I will gradually increase the alpha up to 1. So I'll do that now. Okay, the bake is complete. Let's check it out. Yeah, as we can see, we have the alpha growing for the brush. So it starts very slowly, and then we can see a little bit of the trail, and about at that point it's full speed or full strength of the trail. Great, and we can see we also have the animation of the growing orbit. Now I tweaked it a bit because I want the actual spheres or sphere to go quicker in the middle. It makes more sense if you think about physics, that when you're close to like an orbiting planet or something, it has to go very fast when it's a low orbit, but slower if there's a bigger orbit. So this makes sense. So I'm happy with that. The next thing we're going to do is to animate the painting of the partial logo, because now we have a sphere growing from a very small orbit into a large orbit, and we have a blue trail, and now it's time to start drawing the logo using this sphere. So at this point I want to import a logo, the logo that we are going to draw. I will import that as a scalable vector graphics. Import scalable vector graphics, and I've already prepared this one in Inkscape. So it popped up, but it's so small it doesn't have the same scale as the rest of the scene, but it's here somewhere. Okay, there it is. We just need to scale it up. And now I want to align the logo with the orbit. So we'll have a smooth transaction between the sphere following the orbit and the actual logo. We'll make it a little bit smaller because the brush will go on the inside of this border. Okay, good. So at this point I want to create another canvas and another brush to paint the partial pieces of the logo for the first one. So we'll do that. We'll grab this brush, Shift D, adjust it in the Z direction, and we have it just below. And at this point okay, it's already, by doing so, it's already parented to the brush, which is perfect. That means it will, just as the first brush, it will follow this sphere during the animation. So it's already animated to go around the same path that the first brush is. But seeing in the side view, we see that this is the canvas for the trail. Now we need to create another canvas for the partial logo. Let's make a copy, move it in the Z direction, down there. So we have two brushes and two canvases. What I will do now is to make the materials for the canvas and set up the brush the way I want to. Okay, what I've done now is I've put a new material. I've made a copy of the material and made a new material on the second canvas. I rearranged the canvas, the bake output, to be on a different in a different folder. So when I bake it, all the images regarding this this canvas will end up in this folder instead. I've set the dissolve to 100. I want the effect, the paint on this canvas to linger a bit longer. And on the brush, I've set a color green so we can actually see the distinction between the two. We have the blue trail and we have the green partial canvas color. And if we bake this, we would get another trail with a longer that would linger longer, but that's not what we want. We want the painting effect to occur after a while and just on specific locations. So here we don't want anything, but we want the paint to come where the orbit coincides with the inner circle of the logo. You can see that the logo is built of 4 circles, and we want the brush to paint the partials, the bits and pieces that coincide with the orbit around this logo. So how do we do that? Well, we could use alpha that we did with with the trail, but we could also animate the location of the brush, because now the brush is actually in contact with the canvas, but if I lifted it off the canvas, we wouldn't get any paint on the canvas. So we could use that for an animation technique to paint the streaks where we want them. So we'll do that, we'll try that, and we will move the timeline to the first position where we want the paint on the canvas. So that's a good spot, and we'll put a keyframe for the Z-axis on this location, and then we'll step back 1, so we'll go from 143 to 142, and we don't want any paint there. So what we do is that we, at this position, lift the brush above the canvas, and we'll get another keyframe. So when stepping between the two, you see that we have canvas, no canvas, canvas, no canvas. So the line will be starting to draw, the paint will start to be painted as we go to time frame 143. So we can step to the location where we want the last paint streak to be, right about there, and we'll make another keyframe here, and then we increase 1. This is where we don't want any paint. Side view again, lift it off the canvas, and we can insert a single keyframe for the Z direction there. So at this point we have an animation as the sphere is going around on this lap. The brush is animated to paint where we want it to paint, and lifted off the canvas where we don't want it to paint. So it's just painting in these small areas now that we have selected. Okay, so let's bake and see what we get. Okay, I've set up the materials and I've baked the canvases, and as you can see we have the drawing of the partial logo in green. Boom, 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 and it lingers quite a bit longer than the trail does. So it's working. Okay, so far so good. Now it's time to do the last piece of the animation, which is the actual drawing of the actual logo. Now we've done the partial bits. Now I'm going to show you how to do the actual logo. So we'll bring up the logo again. There it is. And I will use this, I will create a copy of this, and I will delete all sections except this curve right here that goes from this point up to the very top, and I'll create another copy and I'll delete everything except this section going from this corner down to here. So what I'm thinking is that when the sphere hits this point right here, I want a new set of brushes, one that is going to follow the sphere and paint on a new canvas, the logo canvas, and paint a streak going all the way up there, and I'll animate it so it fits the speed of the sphere. And I'll have another brush starting here and going off in this direction. So what this will be is we'll paint 2 segments of this logo, and the rest of the logo is just repetition. We need 3 more spheres animated in the same way with 3 more orbits, and we paint the partial piece of the logo in the same way, and then we'll just break up this logo into, I think it's like 19 different segments to create the entire logo, and it's all done in the same way. Okay, let's get started. Right, we've fixed the curves or logo segments, and just like we've done earlier, we created a new set of brushes and I connected them to the logo segments. The movements are all animated. A new logo canvas was created. It's been baked and all the materials are configured, and this is what we got. As you can see, I chose a magenta color for the logo brushes. I'd like to finish this tutorial by showing you the scene of the complete logo I created. It's pretty crazy. Now, what we're looking at is 27 animated brushes painting on 3 different canvases and following 19 curve segments that makes up the logo. Okay, I hope you could follow the steps okay. If not, please let me know in the comments below. Please consider subscribing and give me a like if you liked it. And thanks for watching.